When it comes to some things, you can't turn around and say it can't happen, because it does and it has. When I was in my early teens, images of many dead bodies were plastered across the front page of the newspaper. Shocking stories of mass, well, they say it was suicide, but if you look at, well, I suppose you could say it comes under conspiracy theories, that a lot of them, it wasn't suicide, it was murder. But yes, like here, followers expected a paradise, but find a brutal work camp. And what we've got here, essentially, is the mindset of somebody who sets up a belief system, brings in followers that support that belief system. There is opposition that comes against that person and that group because of their thought processes and beliefs. So Jim Jones up and moved to another country. And I shouldn't laugh, because it was a bloody tragedy, a horrible end to 909 men, women and children. Now that's actually about the amount of people that you could actually fill into Nightcap. So when it comes to how many people can fall under the influence of one mindset, Jonestown tells you 909 men, women and children. The children probably did not have as much say in it as, that's why I say that there's a lot more to this story. But then Jonestown wasn't the only one. As you saw through the generalized version of what happened at Jonestown, certain events happened, and rather than be taken by the government, Jim Jones ordered everyone to kill themselves. He was actually one of the dead, so he was willing to kill himself, but he's not going to go on his own. And they are the personalities that you've actually got to watch out for. Someone that will die for their belief, but will also take as many believers with them as they can. Now you go to the Waco siege. That was a little bit later on, but it was just as bad. Made the headlines, and yes, there were lots of images of it getting burnt down. David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, all of these people, whether they are based on a current accepted religion or whether they're creating their own philosophy that becomes the rules, the mindset, the agenda for people to have this same thought process and beliefs. When you carefully select those who become part of your community or your group or your cult, you are ensuring that you are gathering support for your opinion, for your agenda. At Nightcap on Minjimble, there is a mindset that people must adhere to. They come under it with a guise of tribal unity, coming back to heart and to country. It is a belief system that you must adhere to. You must have the same mindset when you join up at Nightcap on Minjimble. There is the protocols that have been written by Binar Pownell. He is also out there promoting Nightcap on Minjimble, and also another gifted member. Now, these protocols, the tribal laws, and every other rule that they've put in place is making people adhere to a group set of rules that, well, how do you describe a cult? Well, as I said previously, the only difference between a cult, and occult is one is known, which is a cult is known, occult is hidden. So essentially, when you have cult and occult, you are talking essentially about the practices of human beings and what they believe in, whether they are upfront, honest, and you can see those practices, or whether they are hidden. Now, it is the occult practices that allow for conspiracy theories and many of the core beliefs that are now behind what seems to be a lot of extremist groups that are coming out, where that occult power is ruling the world. There is a cabal. Again, cabal means hidden. So a hidden power that, well, actually cabal means hidden knowledge, not necessarily just hidden practices. But an occult cabal is ruling the world. Now, whether this is true or not, I'm not going to get into here, because the truth of the situation is not as dangerous as those that would believe in the truth of that situation, in the absence of any evidence, because occult practices are hidden. So, of course, there's no proof, there's no evidence. So all you can do is guess. And this is why we have Bohemian Grove, we have the Illuminati, we have Freemasons, and we have all these other Golden Dawn and all these other cults that keep their practices occult, hidden, and only those inside can actually find out about them. So it doesn't really matter whether your belief is religious in the fact that you have to believe in a God or something like that. It is actually the strongly held convictions that you live your life by. And even an atheist could form a cult. And in a way, even though they're not saying that they believe in any bigger power, they are still holding religious beliefs. Because religious beliefs are those beliefs that individuals bind themselves by. Now, the more accepted religions, the mainstream religions, have millions of followers, and therefore it's classified as a religion. But it is still a cult. But it also has occult practices. There are things that go on in churches and religions that you don't see in the public. They are private. As an example, even the Catholic confessional. These are occult, hidden. These are not for general publication or everyone to know. So there are many ways of looking at what is known and is a cult that you can see, and what is occult and you can't see. Now, if we look at some cults, Scientology is one. Now, if you look at the foundations of Scientology and Hubbard that actually started it, it was a CIA project. Well, this is where conspiracy theories come in. Some things exist. How and why they came to exist, or what they actually want to achieve, is the talk of conspiracy theories. But I will accept the general understanding that I've come to is that Scientology was purely fabricated to see whether people, if you structured a belief system, whether people would fall for it. And it has actually become a tool that controls Hollywood. And if you want to talk about the corruption and the control in the entertainment industry, well, Pete Evans will tell you all about it. So will Max Igan and many of the others that are associated with Nightcap on Minjimble, because these are all part of the beliefs that drive the fears that you are an oppressed people. Now, if you go in and you look at how a cult sets up and how it selects members, it actually, if you read through here, you will see that a cult needs some personalities that are at least close to as persuasive as the leader. Very small cults, such as the Mason family, do not really need this. However, large cults, such as the People's Temple, which is the Branch Davidians, Scientology, Jonestown, Jim Jones, and Scientology need appealing figures to do the recruiting. These people need to be articulate, at least able to feign intelligence, and the same goes for sanity. These are not the drooling idiots we may think they must be when looking inside from the outside. So what they've just described there are two personalities that are involved with Nightcap on Minjimble that are persuasive to their large audience as to the things that they are talking about, that all of these things that exist in the world that are there to oppress all people. So, yes, you can articulate and feign intelligence and some sanity when you're talking about these things, but when you look closer into it, like with the beliefs behind the sovereignty movements, all of these free man arguments. Recently, a retired magistrate from Northern Rivers, actually, in New South Wales, who had spent a lot of time actually trying to win the free man arguments, had, when he was a lawyer, when he became a magistrate, he looked into the other side of it. Was there any legal foundation in any of these arguments? And essentially, no. There is not one single legal foundation for any of these free man movements, whether they come under the guise of tribal sovereignty, like what the OSTF are trying to do, whether it's coming under Australia One and Riccardo Bosi and the Magna Carta, or whether it's coming under Rodney Cullerton and GAP and trying to overturn the Supreme Court in Western Australia through the process of essentially invalidating Western Australia as part of Australia and separating Western Australia from the rest of Australia to actually then take over that country. And it is not just one person that is wanting to achieve that now. And unfortunately, when you have people that, well, a couple of years ago, a lot of these things that people would discover, it blows your mind out. You take a bit of time, you've got to think about it, and you've got to check it out, and you've got to come to your own conclusions. But if you're caught up as you're discovering these things and you're in the midst of a COVID lockdown, there are practices going on that highlight to you that what is going on validates all these conspiracy theories that are going on about how there is a power structure, a secret power structure in place in the world that controls the world. Well, I do have a wake-up call for people. We know that. We know a power structure exists. International cooperation. There is lots of closed doors, behind closed doors, under the table deals. This is not the matter of conspiracies. What makes it a conspiracy is when people say that when they don't know what's gone on, they fill in the gaps of what they believe has gone on. But then you get some conspiracies that, well, there's actually some foundation for it. Like you get something like Agenda 21. No one was paying any attention to that until years ago. I think it was a South Australian senator. She brought it up in the courts, in the parliament, and a video was done of it. So once she had brought it up in the parliament, it validated it. So it wasn't a conspiracy theory, it's now fact because of politicians speaking about it. So when you are talking about cults, you are looking at what attracts people to a particular belief system. And it says down here that it includes promise of inclusion, fear of remaining on the outside, the promise of enlightenment, the promise of protection, and similar ideas. These tricks work especially well on people who are not necessarily gullible or stupid, but who are missing something in their lives. Now, not only does it imply that are missing something in their lives, but when you have a catastrophic event that occurs in your life, like where it talks about the recent death in the family, when you are going through shock, you are vulnerable to what you can process and how you can process that, whether you are processing that from a state of fear or rationality. So when you're looking at the people that are attracted to Nightcap or Minjimble, essentially, like the people at Jonestown and any other cult, when they join because of the positives that they see, the positives of inclusion, of being protected from the outside, of the freedom of being able to express your opinions without censorship. And that's the irony, isn't it? That all these ones talk about how they don't like censorship, and yet they're the first ones to participate in it. But I'm going to get on to that. So cults give you direction, a family, and a purpose. If you are missing any of these things, no matter how intelligent you are fair game. And that is, in essence, the truth. Because no matter how intelligent you are, there are parts of you that if there is an emotional need, you will overrule your intelligence and go with the emotion. That's if you let it. Now, one form of cult that I have seen, many different brandings of it, are those that are focusing around the free man argument, trying to find any place in any country where they can set up tax-free, and whatever way they can find to argue that they don't have to pay taxes. Max Igan spent a lot of time defending Palestine and saying that he didn't want to pay taxes because he didn't want to support the bullets that killed the people in Palestine. Well, essentially, our taxes also pay to feed the homeless, to heal the sick, and to say that I am not going to contribute to my society because I believe that Some of it may actually go to a bullet that might actually kill someone. Well, that is actually probably a reality. There is probably 0.01 cent of every tax that is paid that does go to some kind of weaponry, probably even more, that ultimately will be used as a threat or could take life. But that's not the point. That is using a really big what-if argument to get out of the present. Now, in 2006, Max Igan, on this video here, said, and this is about the One People's Public Trust, which if you read about them, this Heather ended up going to jail for 4 to 5 years, I think, for tax evasion. Because you see, it doesn't matter how many ways that you try and set up these tax-free, I want to be my own law unto myself places, cults, you have to live by the rules that everybody else lives by. And sooner or later, no matter how hard you fight, it will, well, if you understand cause and effect, if you put out the cause of resistance, the effect will be resistance back to you. So, but what Max said about these free men and these sovereignty arguments, you go down all these rabbit holes, legal rabbit holes, the free man rabbit hole, the trust law rabbit hole, yeah, you forgot the common law one. You figure out it's all bullshit. It's all rubbish. It doesn't matter. None of it's rubbish. It's all irrelevant. But it's a way we do it. It's a learning process. So Max understands that finding out that when you go down all these rabbit holes that it's a pile of bullshit, he understands it's a learning process. So in 2016, after saying this and coming out of these rabbit holes and knowing it's all bullshit, why in 2021 is he supporting these rabbit holes and free man arguments and common law and sovereignty and tribal? Because it's all bullshit. It's all rubbish. It's all irrelevant. So what did Max Igan learn? So here is Max Igan with Mark Darwin from Bulla Bulla in 2016, I think. Hang on. So that is 2014. And Max Igan spoke at the Freedom Summits as well, for several years, I believe. Now over here we've got Max Igan with Ken O'Keefe. Now I thought Ken O'Keefe had actually disappeared off the scene, but there's been a little bit of an update, and it's come through one of Max Igan's good buddies, Vinnie Eastwood. But let's just take a look back at this is Max Igan, David Icke, and Ken O'Keefe. Now, Ken O'Keefe, sorry, not Keith. Now, Max and Ken O'Keefe went to Gaza. Ken smuggled him in, and there was all this, Free Palestine, help the peoples, do a school. And there was the One People's, World People's Citizen project that they had. And they had got people to donate to that cause. The whole cause was to see if, to pay a solicitor to see if they could find a legal argument to not pay taxes because they didn't want to pay taxes for bullets and guns that would kill people. So Max and Ken got together and drummed up of money and people to come to support the project. Now, one of the people that actually donated was Richie Allen. Another person that contributed is Samantha Backman down here. Now they end up somewhere in Bali, stuff goes wrong, and Max throws Ken under the bus, said it was all a pyramid scam, and he had no idea, and he talks about it in this video here, where he says Max Igan on Zen Gardner and Ken O'Keefe offering some clarity. That's his actual video that he deleted. And every video that Max wanted deleted and gone, I've actually got a copy of. Some of them are actually quite entertaining. Alright, so here we go to Santos Bonacci, or Bonacci, however you want to pronounce his name. This is back in 2012. There's a lot of things that have gone on in the sovereignty and freedom movements and trying to set up tax-free NGOs and all these kinds of things in various different ways with various different arguments. And this Santos was involved with the OPPT. And here, Vinnie Eastwood is interviewing Max Igan and Santos Bonacci for the One People's Public Trust to look at the potentials in it. So Max Igan has, and he even tells you in this video here, that he has for a lot of years looked for all the different ways to set up. And as I quoted you before, he's been down all those rabbit holes, all those legal rabbit holes, all the trust law, and it's all bullshit. So what he's saying is that it can't be done, because no matter which way you come at it, your interpretation is only that. If you are not interpreting the law the way the law is intended to be interpreted, you could end up in jail, or worse, dead. So when things happen in the certain circles of what, well, Vinnie calls him, this is Vinnie Eastwood here, he calls himself a truther. Max Igan calls himself a truther. I just don't like the idea of people that call themselves truther. It's like they're trying to convince you too much to begin with. So it's not the truth, it's someone's opinion, as is all of this, which I'm saying, because I am only telling you from what I've learned and from my perspective, what I see, and why I see Nightcap on Minjimble as a cult, and one that has got an increasing threat to all Australians, and even to the safety of those that have bought into it. Those people that would become members of Nightcap on Minjimble are becoming part of that cult mentality. What is that cult mentality? And who is promoting it? What kind of a person are they? Well, Max sold out on the Richie Allen show, which Richie Allen deleted that show too, because anything that was an embarrassment to Max gets deleted. Then Max, knowing all these different people within the Truther Circle movement, talks and has interviews with all the different people, and they validate his position on it. They don't question him on it. They validate that he was the victim and Ken O'Keefe was the scam artist. Now, in here he talks also about Zen Gardner, because Zen Gardner, if we look down here, it's like, oh, Zen, yes, Zen, he's got all his Zen going, and he's a gardener, what, he's growing Zen in the garden? Well, actually, it came out that Zen Gardner, obviously not his real name, was part of a cult, one that you would say was an occult, called the children of God. And very unsavoury things happened in there. Very unsavoury. The kind of activities that you don't want to talk about, don't want to think about that happens, but all of these people in the Truther movement believe that this secret cabal ruling the world participates in child sacrifices, draining adrenochrome from those children in fear because it gives that adrenochrome that extra boost for them. During COVID, it is said that a lot of celebrities started to look old because they weren't getting their adrenochrome fix. Now, is this true or not? Well, you can't prove it. So all you can say is that I believe this or I don't believe this. And at the end of the day, if you can't prove it, it means that it's actually not affecting you directly. So only those things that are affecting you directly can you do anything about. And when I say directly, I mean in the real and tangible world. You can't fight ghosts. You have to have something real if you want to change things. So there are a lot of things that go on within the Truther movement, a lot of subjects that have come up. And yes, I could dive down a lot of those rabbit holes. I know that when I think about when I watch something from somebody else and they've got an opinion one way or another, I'm thinking, do you have that opinion because you've gone down those rabbit holes, or because in ignorance and in not knowing you have an opinion? See, I went down a lot of rabbit holes because I can't have an opinion unless I go down that rabbit hole. I can't tell you that some of these things are a load of shit if I didn't actually look. So I can only have an opinion because I've actually looked at something. But that doesn't stop other people from having opinions when they haven't looked at something, or because they have a narrow field of view. Which this Teresa Van Leishout over here, that is friends with Philip Dixon and Adrian Brannock at Nightcap on Minjimble, she has this belief that, again, she doesn't like being censored, but if you dare not agree with her, you are against her, you are evil, and she will censor you. None of these people like being questioned on their belief system. They will go within a circle of people that validate them. And you get to see that they stick within that circle. They know the friendlies. They will not get on with someone like me who would challenge their beliefs and ask them why. Well, if you learnt this 10 years ago, why are you still stuck down all those rabbit holes? And why, Max Igan, if you found out that it's all rubbish, why are you now in 2020 and 2021 dragging so many people down those rabbit holes, giving them false beliefs that there is some kind of real outcome on the other side of it? So who is Max Igan? That in January 2020, he did a video, The Truth Whether You Like It or Not. I think that's what it's called, or whether you want to hear it or not. Then he put out another one shortly afterwards, The Truth Trap, both the same day. On the second one he says, did I get your attention? I meant to. On the first one, he starts talking about how, well, first of all, he apologises if he's hurt and upset people. Then he gets into this big thing about how, he's had to change his whole thinking and everything because he thinks he's missed his ride because he hasn't told the truth about the earth, that it's flat. So he's missed his ride because he hasn't told people the earth is flat. Now, later on, he'll tell people that he thinks he was the victim of a directed energy weapon attack because he saw this rectangular beam come down and hit him. Now, if he hadn't have been asleep or if he had been living in town, they probably would have locked him up. But luckily, he had the support of friends around him and they helped him through it. And he would talk for hours, chewing their ear off about this rubbish. One of those people that he spent hours on the phone to was good buddy David Icke. I mean, everybody's got David Icke on speed dial, and when we've got a life crisis, we ring them up and say, hey, mate, do you want to talk to me for a couple of hours because I need to? This is where Max Igan has always tried to deny that there is more of a bond and a relationship between him and David Icke. He's tried to distance himself from that. But he said that he spent hours on the phone to David Icke when this happened. He was only talking to friends during this time. One of those friends was Vinnie Eastwood. Vinnie Eastwood is in New Zealand. And when you watch him, he does this, he sticks his head back in, sinks it down into his shoulders, and he lets out this this real forced, pathetic laugh. I mean, seriously. I think he's trying to imitate Alex Jones. But he comes out, Vinnie. Now, these are a few of the videos over the years since 2011 that Vinnie Eastwood and Max Igan have done together. So it's kind of like the Bros Club. They support each other with all their different agenda stories. You know, Max will tell one story and Vinnie will say, well, that's kind of what I was thinking and that supports what I was saying, and vice versa, you know. So they validate each other's stories. Now, when Vinnie came on, he spent 2 hours. He came on and he said, I don't know how long this is going to take, but I've been on the phone to Max, blah, 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 and this is what's happened. He was talking for 2 hours about Max and his beam experience. So this is in January. Then last year, in 2020. Now, Max says that this attack was done to him because he was doing things on the bushfires and the directed energy weapons, and that he was starting to get a lot of views, and it was done to discredit him because it flipped his personality. The very same time this happened, an article came out that in the newspaper that would draw people's attention to Max Igan so that they'd see him saying the earth is flat and all this other rubbish, and he would discredit himself. So this is what he says happens. So this is the story when he gets on to Raconteurs in February. And we've got Artie and I think his name is Jason. Now, they're talking away. They had Vinnie Eastwood on, and they asked Max Igan on as well. And Art and Jason are asking Max about his beam experience, and one of them asks him, you know, well, you've had a fair few exotic drugs and that, you know, you sure you weren't tripping, man? And it's like, yeah, well, no, I wasn't. No, yes, I've done all those things, and yes, I've partied hard, but no, it's nothing like flashbacks. It's different to that. No, it definitely wasn't any of that. It was, you know. So the thing being, though, that after this show, like Artie down here, he wasn't quite buying what was getting sold. Now, in another show that Artie and Jason do, they've set up to get Max Igan back for another interview. And before that has happened, they're talking about Max Igan, and Artie says a few things, questions that come up in his mind that questions Max Igan's story, and like Richie Allen, Kevin Baker, all these others came to Max Igan's defence, let him tell his story and validate his story by believing him. So Max's audience believe him even more now that yes, he was the victim of an attack, because this person with all these viewers and all their audience, he believes Max, he's supporting Max, so he must be right. So the flat earth thing is not a new thing. Now, yes, I did look into the flat earth because I couldn't believe that there was actually a belief that went there. But back in 2016, I'm pretty sure it was 2016, but it was a fair while ago. Might have even been earlier than that. Hang on. So yes, it is 2016. Flat Earth PSYOPs divides truth movement, Max Igan. Now, this thing about the flat earth dividing the truther movement is a very real thing, because once people were on the same page, they were too much of a risk. So essentially they then had to introduce, do you believe in flat earth or round earth? Because I tell you, the flat earthers are they are a cult belief. Seemingly rational people that can actually believe the earth is flat. Yet if we take pictures like this beam from outer space, you can even see the curvature in the earth. We do live on a big ball. Now, I don't know how Max intended that he missed his ride because he didn't say the earth was flat. The flat earth theory does not allow that anything exists outside of the pancake earth. It's just sort of like this dome of existence in no rules of space and solar systems and all of these other things. It just exists in isolation and in defiance of all physics and laws that we understand. But anyway, back to the raconteurs that they were set to have Max Igan on again. Max Igan has never been back onto raconteurs since Artie here and Jason had questions about Max Igan's story, and that he would have been asked them in the interview, and because he doesn't want to make a dick of himself like he did on Richie Allen, and Richie's his mate, so he'll delete it. These guys, they wouldn't. They'd actually have their opinion, because they were questioning. And so you should. Essentially, Max Igan is someone that has said that he has partied through life, sex, drugs and rock and roll in the music industry, played a guitar, never paid taxes, he's had all these exotic drugs, he's done acid, he's done mushies, he's done ayahuasca, and he's done a lot of heavy drinking. So essentially, his brain matter, does he actually have the capacity to have anything other than fear-based reactions? Why can't someone that learnt something 10 years ago be moving forward into a more positive direction? But the direction it's going is down all those rabbit holes again. All of these people that have come together. There were a lot of people during the lockdown in Victoria, from whether they were in Victoria or outside of Victoria, there were certain people that started to become known because of how vocal they were. And for the freedom marches, we had Dave Onig's come out, Matt Lawson. Karen Brewer was also someone that was very vocal, but she's always been very vocal about the child pedophilia suppression orders. Now she has, well, the first time I heard Karen Brewer talk about it, there were 38 suppression orders. The common one now is 28. Now, everybody that is on this page is considering there are 28 suppression orders concerning pedophiles involving high-ranking officials, even including prime ministers or ex-prime ministers. Now, the fact that these suppression orders exist is something that Bill Heffernan brought up in the Senate, and it is because Bill Heffernan brought it up, that a senator's brought it up, it's validated it, it says it's real, and so everybody else that now is saying, well, right, these 28 suppression orders are real and they are protecting pedophiles, and we need to look at what the government's also done. They've locked us down, they've taken away our rights, they've done all of this, that and the other. Now they're forcing vaccines onto us. It's just got to stop. And it's only going to stop if we come together, we organise. And what is the ultimate goal? To get rid of the standing government and laws and replace it with their own. At the very core of all of this is the real justification of protecting pedophiles. Nobody wants to protect pedophiles. Now, each and every single one of these people on this page has brought up this issue. It is at the core of the one thing that they can prove that was actually said, and it must be true because a senator said it in Parliament. All right, I don't know what I called Heffernan before, but it's Bill Heffernan. I'm pretty sure of that. It's been a while. I should listen more to what Karen Brewer has said and what, it is Bill Heffernan, what he said in Parliament. Now, the thing being is that because these orders are suppressed, the details of them are suppressed, there's actually no way to know if the people that are involved with those suppression orders, if they committed any wrong that is actually being covered up. Say, for example, that there were allegations brought against an individual and they were found to be incorrect. Now, if they, through the course of investigations, other people's names came up and they were high-profile people. Now, if all of that was found, that there was no foundation to it, there is a reason why there would be a suppression order given. That for the fact that justice would seem to have been served, but it's not going to be a public document. You are not going to be able to read the judgment and what went on in the court, because we have ruled on this, we have made a decision, and you just have to trust that we have made the right decision. We are not going to reveal these people's names, what they were even accused of, because there is no foundation in it that was proven. So, and you could say, well, that's because it's a corrupt system that was protecting itself. Well, of course you can say that. But it also could be true that it could actually involve people that did no wrong. But for the fact they may have known that somebody else did wrong and said nothing, that was their only crime. And why is it that so many people do not say something when they see crimes? Well, it's for some fear, one fear or another. And when you're playing in politics, those fears, well, they'd have to be amplified because you're playing for higher stakes. And when you're playing for higher stakes, you can either win big, or fail miserably. So you have to, it's a ruthless game. There's no need to tell people what politicians are like. But politics is taking on a different face. There are fringe groups that have organised into political parties that are based upon certain principles where inherently our government is corrupt, our laws are wrong, and people need to wake up and change everything. Now, in New Zealand, there is Billy T. Kahika, or however you pronounce his name, and Vinnie Eastwood, that are also running for political parties. Now, these political parties align with the concepts of Trump, the greatest, make America great again. The principles behind that are behind GAP, behind the New Zealand party, Australia One party. There's these principles that even Trump validated because he brought out clearing the swamp. You'd have to say that, yes, there is a bit of a swamp that does need cleaning, but, there are other things that he also, people would bring up the fact that he mentioned QAnon. It's like, oh, now QAnon must be valid because Trump mentioned it. Again, QAnon, what is QAnon? And if you actually look at anything to do with QAnon, it is the vaguest writing that leaves so much vague that it allows for people to make up their own story. And I tell you what, I've seen some beauties where, there's this little bit of text written by QAnon and that's strung together with that other little bit of text. It's like, wow, they've just made this whole great big major takeover that's going to happen from that. And Trump knows all about it and all of this, that and the other. And it's like, it's unbelievable. And then they go, oh, well, yes, you're supposed to, it's cryptic. You're supposed to be able to figure out, read between the lines. And it's like, that's not reading between the lines. That's making up a whole lot of lines in between to get from A to B. It's just, no. So much of it is a stretch, and it has been going on for years. Whether it was 4chan, whether it was Anonymous, whether it's QAnon, there are all these ones out there that are standing out and saying, we are not going to take any of this. You got people like Julian Assange and Edward Snowden that have brought out things. Now, some of these have got validity in them. Again, when it comes to someone like Julian Assange, I don't think that what's been done to him has been justified, but I certainly don't know the full story of what has gone on. None of us will, because Julian Assange isn't going to tell us, and any of the governments involved are not going to tell us. So this is where, there's a lot said about these things that from the outside you go, well, looking at all these things that I don't know, I'm thinking that, yeah, he's getting a bad deal, but we don't actually know that. Sure, he's not been treated nicely. He hasn't been, and he's lived in his own prison. When he was held up in the embassy for all those years, he might as well have been in prison because it was just one of his own choosing, rather than one that other governments would want to do, give him. But, the thing being is that, is it true that they actually pursue these people so that it will deter people from whistleblowing? Were they whistleblowing secrets? Well, I've looked at some of the wiki dumps, and some of them are really, they're just ordinary emails. There's nothing to them. So there's a pile of ordinariness. There are some that, yes, for sure, they do leave certainly room for conspiracy theories. So these people are all moving within the same kind of mindset and principles, wanting to achieve the same outcome, the same freedoms, and, they tried to silence us. Censorship. You want censorship? Well, Max Igan, if every comment that I've put on BitChute is deleted. He wants censorship? No one can say anything negative against Max. It gets deleted. Same about others too. They don't like negative opinions. So, for people that want to have the right to an opinion, they are really hypocrites when it comes to allowing other people the right to have their opinion without censorship. But this one up here, finally, YouTube got rid of Vinnie Eastwood. This video, I can't believe Vinnie Eastwood did. It's 2 minutes long. He filmed himself pretending to cry. It's just, I thought, are you kidding me? Is this all he's going to do? He's going to sob for 2 minutes? His reaction of what happened when I found that both my YouTube channels had disappeared? It was absolutely pathetic. But it's drama. This is the kind of thing that Alex Jones would do. And he is just a Kiwi version of Alex Jones. And I hope they put him down and knock him down off as many platforms as what they have Alex Jones. Because it's really nice not to have to hear that man anymore. Now up here in the video with Max Igan and Dave Onyx is Tricky Tritty, or whatever he calls himself. Now, he's actually behind a lot of the Freedom in the Park. He organises these events, and he also organises here. This is Karen Guri from, she's a member of the OSTF tribe. As the tribe is part of the OSTF. This tribe that she's claiming to represent is actually said to be non-existent, but anyway, that's another story. So the whole issue of sovereignty, whether it comes from the Magna Carta, whether it comes from exercising rights under common law or certain interpretations like the OSTF does it with tribal, whether it's whatever way they're coming at this, I'm a free man, I rule myself, the laws that are in Australia don't apply to me because they are wrong, and all the politicians need to be arrested, they need to be put in jail, and we will put our own politicians in. Like Theresa Van Lieshout has, as Governor-General of Australia, ordered the military to stand down, ordered the police to stand down, and said you will not murder Australians anymore. Theresa has called me evil because I don't agree with her approach. I said that, well, you see, she became Governor-General because God gave her that power for a start. She swore under God and in front of 50 people and 40 policemen, or the other way round, and now she's the Governor General. And if you don't agree with her, you are part of the problem and you are evil too. And she will censor you, even though she doesn't believe in censorship because she thinks that she should have a right to speak. This is the way that they think. And Theresa Van Lieshout actually contested a political seat in WA. And she did a promo for her party. She's at the beach in a bikini with a fishing rod in her hand, saying that she's going to do this video to get your attention so that you would go and watch her other ones. And I have watched some of the other ones, and well, her doing a bit of fishing down by the beach was by far the least offensive of all. It's when she started opening her mouth and, like, why is she better to lead Australia? Because she's smarter and knows better. Yeah, that's good. So what are you smarter in? What do you know better? Again, this is where you cannot ask any of these people questions. See, Theresa Van Lieshout has even upset the freedom movement. You see people like Jackie Dundee that was speaking at an event that was organised by Theresa Van Lieshout. And Theresa Van Lieshout talks about how, well, they got nasty with her and they're evil and they're as bad as the government as well. So there's a lot of division that is created within those that are trying to hold on to this one vision of arresting our politicians, removing our sitting parliament, government, and replacing the Governor General, and using the military. There is a strong military presence. Riccardo Bosi, this Billy Kahika, well, even Max with his Ken O'Keefe. And Ken O'Keefe is ex-military, Marine, US Marine. Now, Billy here actually claims that he's done tour of duties, but he's also a musician. His dad was actually a famous musician. So you can see that Billy and Max can get along quite well and perhaps have even partied. But you scrape the surface off Billy and, well, there's an expose out there on Billy. In his years in the music industry, he has not been very well liked by a lot of people. There is common things coming out, and, well, I think he thinks of himself as a bit of a rock star, you know, because his dad was a legend and, you know, he can play too and people think he's great. Again, this is another aspect that they use to draw in people. Philosophies. And anyone that's been in a band, oh, you lived the lifestyle, you were a rock star, you travelled, you did this, you did that. And if they can play, that's almost like someone walking down the street with a dog. You know, you'll pat the dog, but and you'll talk to the person and say, nice dog, but you won't talk to that person. The same thing about if a musician plays well. There's this kind of feeling that the music that they've produced is something nice, so therefore they must be nice. It's just, well, they can get in the zone and they can play something well. Doesn't necessarily mean they are in tune themselves. So they all validate each other. They will only speak to those that will support their agenda, that will confirm what they want others to believe. Anyone that questions it will get censored. And Max Igan is quite nasty with his censorship. But if you go back here, you can see that they're wearing Creative Foundation t-shirts. This is associated with Freedom Summits. There's Mark Darwin there's Adrian Brannock, there's Max Igan. Now, this Ben Stewart here. Ben Stewart has quite a history with Max Igan and Ken O'Keefe and also David Icke. Mark McMurtry, more especially, has been representing to speak on behalf of certain tribes as part of the Tri-State Nation that are actually their own nation in Australia. I'm not going to get into that here because I just wanted to draw the elements of the politics, the socio-economic politics, the psychology that goes into the mind games and the mind play. Max Igan in 2016 said all the rabbit holes that people are currently going down and have created political parties around. He said they're all rubbish. He knows this, and yet he's promoting it. In this video here, in April 2020, 3 months after he's had his beam and flat earth experience, Max Igan says, I trust them. He is gifted a share for the amount of interest that he created and the sales that he created, bringing into Nightcap. As the Freedom Day marches, the lockdowns continued, resistance against certain things implemented continued, organisers all coming within the same circle of mindset, coming together from all different factions, working on the same page. Riccardo Bosi goes to the Freedom Days as well and speaks. So he's attempting to bring in the same people that Max Igan and all of the other anti-vaxxers and anti-lockdown, sack all the politicians, arrest the politicians, put them in jail. These are legitimate outcomes they want to achieve. Now, are they realistic? Well, the only way you are going to remove our politicians is if you arm yourself, because our politicians are protected by the police and the army, which is why they all also suggest that they have had talks with the army and the police, and that there are people that are both in current serving in the military and police and also retired who are wanting to join in on this cause. And at its core, what they will be convincing most people on, it will come back to 28 suppression orders on accusations of pedophiles within our government and our legal system. So as the circle of validating each other with friendly interviews that, yes, oh, you're so brilliant. Do you know how many interviews I've actually heard Max being interviewed where, you know, he's talked about like he's some messiah. You know, he's some genius. But as I said before, those that draw in have to have a semblance of intelligence and sanity for it to work. And Max Igan does that. He might be spinning his wheels telling the same story 10 years later and have done nothing about it. But he was also telling the same story before COVID. Same with this Theresa Van Leichardt down here, telling the same story before COVID. Only now they've got a huge audience. Instead of hundreds, they've got thousands. And that came from the lockdowns, that came from COVID. Without any of that, the ranks of these radical political extremist groups would not have swollen to the numbers that they are now. This Dave is sitting in the middle while Max is talking backwards and forwards with Tricky. He sits there like a stunned dummy. It's like he's got no clue, no interest, or it's just so way over the top of his head he doesn't know how to deal with it. And that can actually be the thing when you start dealing with one concept that might challenge what you believe in. But when you deal with a lot of rabbit holes and you're challenged all at once, if you don't have the foresight to do it, well, pretty much in your own time and space without peer group pressure or the pressure of lockdowns. Hey, these people that are saying if you're not marching on Freedom Day, you're for oppression. That's ridiculous. I was actually set to go to the first Freedom Day march that they ever had, one here in Hobart, but I changed my mind because there was just something that didn't feel right about it. It just, for a start, they didn't have anything organised. And then I realised, oh wow, what have we got? A bunch of kids or influencers that haven't got a clue. And back at that stage they didn't, and that's why they looked for someone like Max Igan. And, well, they looked for Pete Evans, there's Tom Barnett as well, and there's a few of them that have been out there in Australia that people could turn to. That, oh wow, you know, all this stuff. Wow, you're so smart, I didn't realise. You know, all this stuff about 5G and, you know, all of the things that can come up as far as, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Is it being done to you? These people have got an answer for it. Well, I've looked down those rabbit holes too, as I've said. And the thing being that you can only change reality and what is real. If you cannot define any of these conspiracy theories that affect your reality, how can you actually change it? If there's nothing about your reality that can change that big thing, all right, I'm going to get rid of all the big and powerful people that are controlling the world. Yeah? How? Well, the only way I could do that is if I had contact with alien races with really good weaponry and all that stuff. So basically, I could hold all the countries in the world under the threat of my firepower, because I had all my alien friends standing out there ready that, yeah, well, we're just going to knock out all your satellites, you'll be blind, then we'll send in an EM pulse and you'll be stuffed, none of your electrics will work ever again, and, you know, all this stuff. Yeah. And then what happens? The world goes into chaos, and the people that are the power structures have got their bunkers and all really, you know, sitting pretty. So while the whole world goes into chaos, they maintain their power and their wealth. When, you know, 100 years later society gets back together, they're still the ones in charge. You haven't changed anything. It's like, no. The power structures that have control of the world have done so from generations of controlling these situations. It has taken time to reach a level of world control and cooperation, especially when you've got other countries that have to cooperate. And is it a fact that they all are under one rule? I mean, you can't deny the fact that there is a photograph that shows that the leaders of opposing sides met during the war. They're sitting down, having a cigar, having a drink together, while they're out there their people are killing each other. Is that possible? Well, of course it is. I mean, they're not going to put their life on the line, and they will put themselves in a situation to have high-level talks. Maybe I could talk that person into surrendering and giving up. So, well, that was said to be at Bohemian Grove too. And, well, if you've looked at Alex Jones on Bohemian Grove, and you'd know that, oh, well, you've got Illuminati, Freemasons, and the skull and cross and skulls. What's the one that the Bushes are supposed to be part of? I don't know. There's just so many of them. And that's the trouble too, is that for every one that you could name, there's going to be 100 more that you don't know the name of, and that they exist. There's a sub-chapter, and, oh, well, that one didn't quite like the beliefs of that, so it changed itself, and now it's a different name. I mean, there are so many cults and subcults of beliefs on how people should be that range from the belief in the divine, to the belief in aliens, to the belief in science, to the belief in, hey, I'm just going to be king of my own castle. And those that are wanting to set up their own castle, Mark McMurtry, Adrian Brunnock, Nightcap on Minjimble, they want to create a castle, a place where like-minded people can come together, where it's the same philosophy, where you're protected from the outside, where these wise leaders or members can help you through the murky waters of all the truth that is out there. So Max Igan has got around over the years. In the last 10, 12 years, well, probably 14, he has spoken to a lot of different people around the world. And he has, well, some of them regular contact with, some of them it's a one-off interview. But one of them, he's done a few interviews with Ken O'Keefe before they had the falling out, before Max threw Ken under the bus for the pyramid scam. Now, something amazing came up the other day when I'm looking for something, and I saw Vinnie Eastwood doing happy birthday for Ken O'Keefe. And it's like, this has got to be some kind of a joke, because Vinnie Eastwood is Max's boy. You know, they're buddies. And surely Vinnie, who's known him since at least 2011, knew what happened in 2016 with not only Zen Gardner, but also with Ken O'Keefe. How that, he tried ripping people off, and Max was involved with it, and he had to reveal Ken as the perpetrator, because, even though he was his mate and he didn't want to do it, he had to do it. So, how is it that good mate here, Vinnie Eastwood, at the beginning of 2020, spent hours on the phone with Max after his BM experience? How is it that he brings Ken O'Keefe on? Oh, I thought, well, they must be setting him up. It must be some kind of a joke. Oh, it was a joke, all right, but not the kind that you actually think. Vinnie Eastwood actually had Ken O'Keefe on as a serious guest. Now, it's his birthday. You can see that. Like, I didn't watch it. It's 4 hours long. Can you believe that? His ordinary shows are 2 hours. So all I did was click, 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 and through. And as I did, I saw one instance where he's picking up a stubby And then the next click, it's like, yeah, his words are getting slurred. The next click, they're even slurrier, and he's like he's got a real gutter mouth. And then it gets into Billy, to Kahika, and he's on there, and he's talking away, and he's swearing away, and he's drunk as. And Vinny's just, yeah, he thinks it's all funny. And then, yes, after 4 hours, this little video down here, Vinny had to put out an apology video that it was Ken's birthday and he's really sorry, he was drunk, and Billy's, it was on Billy's feed and his viewers saw it and they were offended by it, and it was like, I'm very sorry. But you watch it and his eyes, I mean, they're nearly popping out of their head. You know how people do that? Oh, look, I'm going to open my eyes wide up because the more I open them, the more genuine you'll believe I am. So just like when he's crying here, that I'll video myself for 2 minutes crying, and you'll believe that, and you'll feel for me. It was, I couldn't believe it. It's so pathetic. He videoed himself for 2 minutes crying. The first thing he starts off, he's looking straight into the camera. It's like, are you looking? Are you watching me? And then he's like, and then after 2 minutes, it's like you see his eyes. There's no tears, right? But then there's his red eyes, and it's like, oh, mate, you didn't put clear eyes in, did you? Because you haven't cried. I mean, yeah, I can understand you'd be really, as my son says, you'd be really tilted. Your channel's got shut down, but what kind of a bloody sook videos themselves crying for 2 minutes and then uploads it so people can see, this is how I reacted when they closed my YouTube channel. Oh, the censorship. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I have to laugh at it sometimes because here are these people, they will censor you left, right and centre unless you agree with their narrative. And they cry because people just got sick of them and just shut them down because they're full of shit. Now, when it comes to the power of the same mindset, you see people all showing up to these freedom days. You see the same people involved. Pete Evans, Max Igan, Dave, Tricky, Riccardo, Bosi. I think Teresa's tried to go to them, but she's too loudmouth. She expects to be the centre of attention, so she doesn't like sharing that much. So, yeah, I think she sort of gets swept to the side a bit. She's got to rant and rave on her own. And because they're talking out about anti-vax, 5G, and the ability to choose, not to choose, all the corruptions and the things, and, they all have their own little spiel. But essentially, they get out there every time and they repeat the same thing. And every time it happens, there's a large police presence that, well, guaranteed they'd be recording every single person that has attended these. And they would actually be on a government watch list right now. That's just a simple truth. Whether you say it's for domestic terrorism or it's simply for the fact is here's a large bunch of people that have gathered together, largely under lockdown conditions, that, yeah, they'll search your faces to find out who you are in case there's a need to shut down and identify the people that might spread these diseases. I mean, you're self-defeating. You're identifying yourself. And you're not going to achieve anything. When you come with resistance, you will meet resistance. Now, they'd say they're peaceful protests. They're only getting together to talk. It may be peaceful, but it's intimidatory, and it's designed by the strength of numbers to intimidate by the strength of numbers. So you could say it's passive-aggressive. It might be peaceful, but it is a passive-aggressive, somewhat narcissistic behaviour. Anyway, the only way to change things was found out a long time ago by people like Bob Brown. You can't change them from activism. You have to change the system itself, because you can butt your head against it, and all you're going to do is butt your head against it. You're not going to win. You have to get in there and make the legislative changes. Change the way that people think about things and the way that they produce the laws, and they modify laws and regulations accordingly. It doesn't happen quickly, but it does happen. And it's the only way through to any resolution, is drop by drop, piece by piece, change by change. These freedom marches come under the banner of peace, but as I've said, they are implied threats of intimidation to take it further if they don't get what they want. Now, all these radical, extreme political views, people can have them as long as they're not affecting the majority, or they are a threat to all Australians. When they become a threat, that's when I start paying attention to them. And from everything that has been starting to come forward, it would seem that they are arming themselves, training people and arming them. Theresa Van Lieshout here, at the very minimum, is appointing Australian Federal Police officers in her capacity as the Governor-General. She is also making them badges, and as a natural course, they get trained and they must follow the laws, but a federal police officer will be trained how to use a weapon and trained how to use force. There are ones like Theresa and Riccardo Bosi have both said that the military and the police have come to them and intend to cooperate with their efforts to put the corrupt and crooked politicians in jail. Or as Theresa calls them, the shut down politicians. Now, when it comes to all of these things, there's one thing I understand that I've known since I was a kid, that you have your rights and freedoms. The only time that you will have those restricted is if there is some kind of a biohazard, if you need to be quarantined. And that's when special rules come into effect. So basically, Australia, whether its advice was good or bad, did what the rest of the world did, followed the best advice at the time and went with the instructions that were advised. Whether people agree that it is a good decision or a bad decision, it's not down to the politicians that actually made those decisions, because they can all prove it back to saying that, well, it came from the medical authorities, it came from international cases, it came from a worldwide scenario and all these things that were happening. Whether it is designed, whether it's a, COVID fraudius or whatever Max Igan calls it, whether it's real or it's fake, is also not the issue here, because it's what these people believe is the case, that it is 100% fake, It is designed to collapse the world economy, bring in the global reset, to bring in food shortages, and to basically further shrink down the population and suppress them more, to create a bigger divide between those that have got, that 0.01% and the rest of the 99.99% of the population. That the wealth is stripped from the majority, and you could say from, in a lot of circumstances, that big businesses didn't suffer during COVID. In fact, they would have produced record sales. So when COVID comes in, it actually makes people desperate to actually find alternatives to the restrictions that are put on them. And fair enough, I haven't had the restrictions here in Tassie. We've been very lucky. And while there's border closures in other states, nothing really changed here in Tassie. Pretty much the only thing that changed was that they put dots on the floor and put up shields in the supermarket. That's all. And they put up all these signs everywhere that says, keep so far apart from one another. And you go into a shop, and I'm standing there, someone's standing right next to me. She bends over and she knocks me with her butt as she's bending over. And I was like, yeah. I mean, the thing is that it is actually a perceived threat. There is no perceived threat for the majority of people, especially from what I experience. So it's easy for me and a lot of others with none of that perceived threat to actually see others in that situation would go way over the top. Like, I live in Australia, and people right now are actually objecting because there's forced vaccinations, mandatory vaccinations. Well, there is no mandatory vaccinations. Not in any country in the world. Not in Australia. No one has said to me that I need a mandatory vaccination. Now, if I was a healthcare worker or some other kind of worker in a certain position where there are already standards where you need to have the certain immunisations, they would be mandatory for you to do that job. But it's not mandatory because you're a citizen in Australia. And, if you don't want it, quit your job. Because seriously, if you're in a job and you believe that strongly in it, quit. But then again, you could be like Pete Evans, that he wants to stay as a senator for the Great Australia Party. He wants to be able to go into Parliament and in and out of places like that. So he has to have his immunisation. He has to get his jab and then his next jab. So do you believe your own hype, Pete? That the thing being is that my kids have been vaccinated. I've been vaccinated. Most of the people I know have been vaccinated years ago, not with COVID. Now, most of the people I know have not had any discernible injury, vaccine injury. Certainly not sterility, no rare diseases, no onset of... there are tragedies that do occur with immune responses at times. And some people you will just not know whether they will react or not. Egg or bees, nuts, any of these things that you might have a sensitivity to, you could react badly to an immunisation. So essentially, again, it is perceived risk. Now, when it comes to the COVID vaccine, the perceived risk of the COVID vaccine is as anybody can see. It's rushed science on something that, well, ever since I was a kid, you'd go to the doctor with a virus and he'd say, there's nothing we can do, it has to run its course. There is no cure for viruses. If you manufactured a cure like they do with the flu vaccine each year, when you're getting the flu vaccine that year, it was for the previous year's strain that is now mutated and doesn't actually exist this year, which is why you can get sick from the immune shot, the flu shot, and still get sick from getting the flu that year too. So there is, in my mind, there is no way that you can immunise against a virus. You have to sweat it out. You have to let your immune system fight it. Of course, you can give things to your immune system to help you fight it off, but essentially there's no antibiotic or anything like that. And there's certainly no way to pin the virus down to that particular strain that you would be exposed to, that it would be effective in any way, shape or form. So when it comes to perceived effectiveness, I don't see that it would have any, and the risks associated with rushed science, that is the part that I object to, is that it is so rushed. It can take them 5 to 10 years to do a study and trials, and what, they're whipping it out the door in under a year. They're producing vaccines when they should still be looking for the cure to the vaccine. That's just my thoughts anyway. Whether there's foundation or not to it, it doesn't matter, because that's my belief and I'm entitled to it. Well, it has got rather long. I didn't mean to rabbit on so much, but when you go down rabbit holes, you do rabbit on, don't you? The thing being that there are complexities around the politics of people and what they believe in and the mindset that they hold, that even if they may have variations on certain things, there is a common belief that holds them together. And that is what they're looking for at Nightcap or Minjimble, that common belief that will hold them together in the views that are set up through what Mark McMurtry and Adrian Brannock, but more Mark McMurtry, has made up as the protocols, as the tribal law, as the rules for everyone to follow. Now, the thing being too that you might find interesting is that, say you buy into Nightcap and you want your friends to come round and visit. Well, what happens if these people here, let's just say that you might have been down the community centre and one of them told Mark McMurtry what a dickhead he was. The next thing, Mark McMurtry comes to you with an official letter that says that particular friend of yours can no longer come and visit you, can not set foot on that place, simply because this person had an opinion and thought he was a dickhead and told him. And Mark McMurtry didn't like it. Now, that kind of thing's actually going to happen, because when you get personalities that set up these cult mentalities to all have the same mindset, you've got to have a leader. Mark McMurtry likes to see himself as the leader, the one that's got it all figured out because he started the OSTF. He's the one that's been up in court and he's the one that's argued all these things. Again, has to be seemingly intelligent and sane. But again, you scrape the surface and you ask the parrot to talk outside of what they are really good at repeating, and, well, Mark McMurtry can't tell the difference between myopic and cathartic. All these people here are drumming up a mindset that will hand over money that will go to one place and gather there. Close to 1,000 people could end up living at Nightcap or Minjimble if it went ahead. If it went ahead. But it also, if it didn't go ahead as a community, there's over 3,500 acres that go on to national parks and everything. Certainly, there could be a way where people could train with armed weapons and guerrilla warfare skills without anyone knowing. And certainly they don't like anyone entering their property without permission. Nightcap or Minjimble is a closed community, a closed gate community. That essentially means you're just in a large prison. Closed gate usually means you're going to have some kind of security monitoring the area. And I think we've seen that security on a current affair with Toothless Owen, I think his name is, that, front teeth missing, Mark McMurtry's bodyguard, who came out to threaten a current affairs reporter. So if you don't believe, or if you attempt to threaten the beliefs by even just asking questions, because a current affair, we're not going there to cause violence, they're only going there to ask questions. And that was the problem. It was the questions that they were going to ask that Mark McMurtry wanted to avoid, send his little bouncer boy down to head him off at the pass. And well, we all saw what that ended up like. So what happens if you get that kind of a security guard come and threaten you, or your friends, and you're on closed gated community? The police aren't allowed in, they can't answer your call. They do go to the gate to try and get in, but little Mark McMurtry would go down here, or Adrian Brennock, and say, no, you can't come in. They did that to the fire brigade when back at Bullabulla, Ron, who was on the current affairs, his bus burnt down. Somebody called for the fire brigade. The fire brigade come to the front gate. Somebody's down there telling them, no, you can't come in, but there's a fire. Yeah, well, you can't come in, you're not coming in. And the fire brigade said, well, if you don't let us in, we're going to call the police and they will escort us in. So they were let in. And the reason that they didn't want the fire brigade to come in is because, well, they saw the illegal dwellings and they reported them. They would actually blame Gillian Norman for reporting them to council, but they were long since reported when Ron's bus burnt down and the fire brigade went in there and they saw all those illegal dwellings. So by the time Gillian Norman had reported it, they were already getting ready to go out there and see what was going on. In fact, they've been out there 4 times. And each time they keep telling them a different story. They at Bullabulla. And those at Bullabulla have the cult mentality around the Truthology movement and Freedom Summits, Creative Foundation, My Debt's Gone, and the original Sovereign Tribal Federation. Mark Darwin was a very strong supporter of Mark McMurtry. He even uploaded an OSTF video to his own website, really promoted the OSTF. They gave Mark McMurtry a share. He ended up living in the house for free for years and years and is still there. They did his website. We hear in the Voxes what they did for him. So Mark McMurtry here got a lot out of Bulla Bulla, and now he stands to profit out of Nightcap on Minjimble, and he has not paid a single cent for it. Not a single cent in rent since 2016, and he did not pay a single cent to become a developer in this Nightcap on Minjimble. Not a cent. On the other hand, his brother did. So his brother's got something to lose if Mark McMurtry is full of shit. Well, dear Tony, yes, you lost it, mate. Kiss it goodbye. I don't think you're going to see it again. But then again, the past lost investors are still waiting after the sale last year from the liquidation of the asset to get paid out. Now, and what's that? 5 years? Well, maybe 4. So, when it goes under, maybe look at 4 or 5 years before you might get something back. But due to the number of investors that are actually at Nightcap on Minjimble now, the dividend would not be 100% or, a dollar for dollar that you paid. You'll be taking a loss in what you paid. Well, could be wrong. I tell you what, let's liquidate and see. Because I guarantee you that what is owed now is nothing compared to, what was owed at Lumban Horizons was nothing compared to the amount it has spread out to now. Anyway, that's my thing on cults, occults, mindsets, group thinks, sheep and shepherds. And are people actually so much of a sheep for getting sucked into a cult? They're getting sucked in by certain sets of beliefs. Well, not necessarily, because you can become stunned and overwhelmed by the revelation of certain things. That's where it's important that those around you steer you in the right direction. When you've got people like Max Igan around, and Pete Evans, and Vinnie Eastwood, and Mark McMurtry, they're all going to steer you in the one direction. The man has a psychological problem with his own heritage. He cannot identify where he came from. So if he can't accept where he came from, where is he taking other people to? Every kingdom needs a king. King McMurtry. I think Adrian Brannock would be quite content to let King McMurtry have his crown, just so long as AB makes all that money out of it. He doesn't care. And that's a lot of talk, isn't it? Gonna leave it on that. Talk to you next time. Bye.